Let's go through the Chile and Argentina scenario. Chile and Argentina. And we'll go through questions 1 through 8. Now, the most important thing to remember is that intuition is critical. And to get the intuition right, we sketch little diagrams and then we work with those diagrams instead of trying to calculate stuff out by simply using numbers. So, question 1. Which country has an absolute advantage in jelly bean production? Okay, so we'll start by sketching out the basic scenario for each country on a diagram. That's going to be the consistent philosophy here. So begin at the beginning. We've got Chile. It will be our first country. And we've got a production possibility frontier for Chile. And the way it's going to work is the number one principle when drawing the diagram is to use PPFs, production possibility frontier diagrams. So when you get the data for this scenario, what you're given is number of labor hours and then the number of goods each labor hour can produce. So you're going to convert the information you're given into a diagram that has one of the goods on the vertical axis and the other good on the horizontal axis. So this is the overriding approach. Convert everything to production possibility frontier format, even if the data you're given is in terms of labor hours. Don't try to draw a diagram that somehow has labor hours on it. That's the number one reason it would become practically impossible to answer the questions. So, Chile has 1,000 hours of labor. 1 hour of labor produces 1 pound of jelly beans. So that's sort of easy. In Chile, an hour of work produces a pound of resources, where the resource we're talking about is jelly beans. So let's put jelly beans on the vertical. Now, it doesn't actually matter which way you did it, okay? Whether jelly beans were on the vertical or the horizontal, the answers will still come out to be the same. And while we're at it, let's just put the other good, which is peanut butter, on the horizontal. So you see production possibility frontier. Number or amount of jelly beans on the vertical, number or amount of peanut butter on the horizontal. In Chile, 1 hour of labor produces 1 pound of jelly beans, so that's easy. You've got 1,000 hours and each hour produces 1 unit of jelly beans, so maximum quantity of jelly beans that Chile can produce is 1,000. That's the max. That's where all labor is devoted only to producing jelly beans. It takes 2 hours of labor to produce a pound of peanut butter. There's 1,000 hours of labor available. If the entire 1,000 were devoted to peanut butter production, maximum peanut butter production possible would be 500. So we put 500 on the peanut butter axis. We connect the two lines or 2 points. So there you have a production possibility frontier for Chile. Now we're going to do an exactly matching thing for Argentina. Let's go through the Chile and Argentina example. Stop. Okay, this is just a test. Okay, color is wrong. Let's go this way. Okay, that looks good. Here's Argentina. And if you work it out in the same way that we did for Chile, you will see that total maximum possible jelly bean production in Argentina is 1,000. Argentina has 1,000 hours of labor, and 1 hour of labor produces 1 pound of jelly beans. So that's like Chile. So the intercept on the vertical is 1,000. And of course, we're going to label the vertical and the horizontal for Argentina the same way that we do for Chile. So everything is comparable. Now, when it comes to peanut butter, Chile needs 3 hours to produce a pound of peanut butter. So the intercept on the peanut butter axis is going to be different, and you figure it's got to be different on the horizontal axis because otherwise Argentina would have the same ppf as Chile, and if it was the same, then there'd be no reason to trade. Okay, so approximately speaking, the number here is 330. I mean, it's not exactly 330, it's like 3333, 3.333, etc. But that gives you the basic idea. You have it accurate enough that you can answer the questions. So the number one thing to notice is that Argentina has a steeper slope for its production possibility frontier compared to Chile. And that right away tells you which country will be exporting this which good. Here's the way it works. If you use the same scale and you have 2 countries, and here's country A, and here's country B, and again, if the scale is the same for both countries, and country A has a production possibility frontier that looks like that, and country B has a production possibility frontier, let's say it looks like that, and the labeling of the axis is the same and the scale is the same, you can tell immediately just by looking at the diagram which country will export which good. Because of the way comparative advantage works, the country with the steeper slope will export what I call the vertical good, and the country with the flatter slope will export what I call the horizontal good. And that just comes out of comparative advantage and the way the trade-off works. Country B has comparative advantage in the vertical good because if country B wants to increase its production of the vertical good, it does not have to sacrifice very much of what I'll call the horizontal good. So let me repeat that again. If country B wants to increase production, increasing production of that vertical axis good only requires a very tiny sacrifice in terms of what I'll call the horizontal good compared to A. So when you see, again, I have to assume it's the same scale that you're using for the 2 diagrams. That's very important. If you use the same scale, The country with the steeper slope has the comparative advantage in the so-called vertical axis good. And this must necessarily flip the other way. If I'm thinking about country A automatically must be having the comparative advantage in what I'll call the horizontal good. If country A wants more of the horizontal good, it does not have to sacrifice so much of the vertical good. So there's a lot of significance to this. What it means is that immediately, just by knowing the slopes, how they're different, and always you're using the same scale, of course, just by looking at those slopes, even without any numbers at all, I can tell you that it will be country B that exports the vertical axis good and country A that exports the horizontal axis good. In our problem that we're working on, A is Chile, and the horizontal axis good is the peanut butter, and the vertical axis good is the jelly beans. All right, and that's of course true for the other country. So given that we have this sort of pattern for Chile and Argentina, we can say that if trade occurs, it will be Argentina that's exporting the jelly beans, and it is Chile that will be exporting the peanut butter. Now that's comparative advantage. What about absolute advantage? Absolute advantage does not look at relative slopes. Absolute advantage looks at the actual sort of size of production. So if this is my country Chile, and this was my country Argentina, and if, let's say, Chile, for example, had a lot more labor than Argentina, then it's possible that Chile can produce more of either good than Argentina can. So Chile can have what's called the absolute advantage in the sense that it can produce more of both goods than Argentina can. Okay? So to summarize, what I'll call absolute advantage, AA, is sort of more about the size of a country. Is your production possibility frontier way out to the right or way inward? That sort of gives you the total amount that either country can produce. So in this case, Chile would have absolute advantage in both goods. Argentina doesn't have absolute advantage in anything in this diagram, in this picture. In this case that I'm drawing here, which is obviously not the case for your problem. But I want to emphasize the difference between absolute advantage and comparative advantage. Another way to say this is that absolute advantage is about maximum production possible. Okay, in one country, because it's bigger, might have more ability to produce more of both goods, even simultaneously. Comparative advantage is about trade-offs. It's about stuff happening on the margin, as we say in economics. And the thing about optimizing any economy or system is that usually it's the trade-offs that you focus on, not the absolute amount of production or what the absolute size of any choice is. It is what are the trade-offs, and that is, by the way, why calculus shows up so much in economics. If you go any distance into economics, calculus will keep showing up, and the reason calculus shows up is because calculus is the mathematics of small changes, and small changes are exactly what trade-offs are about. So to come back to our problem for Chile and Argentina, when we're making decisions or answering questions about what countries will choose to do, most of the time we will be looking at the trade-offs, the comparative advantage, the slopes, and not so much the absolute size of a country. So we can go back to the restart. So that's Chile, and Chile has this jelly beans top, peanut butter down at the bottom, and the slope is like 1,000 to 500, like that, something like that. And we are actually given the information in the following questions. I'll put it in now, that this is where Chile is in autarky. In Chile, if there's no trade based on people's preferences for consumption, that is what they will choose to be producing and consuming. That quantity, 200 peanut butter and 600 jelly beans, okay, measured in the appropriate units. Argentina, we have a matching diagram, so I'll try to put it on the same thing. You know, of course, it's not exactly to scale, and Argentina also starts at 1,000, but instead of going down to 500, it goes down at a steeper slope to around 330. Okay, it's not exactly that, but close enough. And in autarky, Argentina chooses to consume 400 jelly beans and 200 peanut butter. So this is a situation when the countries are not trading at all. So all the information for answering the questions comes from basically these two pictures. You do not have to do a lot of multiplying, dividing, adding and subtracting, okay? Most of what you know you can figure out just by looking at this. So let's look at some of the questions. Number one question, which country has an absolute advantage in jelly bean production? So that means at maximum use of all resources, which country can produce the most jelly beans? And the answer is C, neither country has an absolute advantage over the other one, because both of them would produce 1,000 units of jelly beans if that's what they devoted all of their resources to. So you see the intercept on the vertical axis of jelly beans is the same number, 1,000. So neither country has the absolute advantage when it comes to jelly beans. Question 2. Which country has comparative advantage in jelly bean production? So that means if a country wants to produce more jelly beans, which country makes the smallest sacrifice in terms of peanut butter? Well, that country is Argentina. If Argentina wants one more jelly bean, Argentina only has to sacrifice 1/3 of a unit of peanut butter. If Chile wants one more jelly bean, it has to sacrifice 1/2 of a unit of peanut butter. So Argentina makes a smaller sacrifice in order to get the one jelly bean. So Argentina has the comparative advantage in the production of jelly beans. So the answer to number 2 is B, Argentina. Question 3, what are the endpoints of Chile's production possibility frontier? The answer is A. 1,000 pounds of jelly beans and 500 pounds of peanut butter. You can see it right there on the diagram. So the answer to number 3 is A. Question 4 asks, what is the price of peanut butter in Argentina before the two countries begin to trade with each other? This is another question about the position in autarky. The answer to number 4 is D. The price of peanut butter in Argentina before the two countries begin to trade with each other is 3 pounds of jelly beans per pound of peanut butter. So 4 is D. Question 5 is harder. It asks, in order for Chile to gain from trade, the price of jelly beans must be less than. Now we've just done a jump up in the sophistication of the question. Before we can even begin to think about the question, we need to be clear in our heads which country is exporting which good. Now, since Argentina has the steeper slope, that is to say the comparative advantage in the production of jelly beans, we know that if trade should occur, Argentina will be exporting jelly beans. Jelly beans will be Argentina's export. That's the good in which Argentina has the comparative advantage. And we also know that if there is trade, Chile will be exporting the good in which it has the comparative advantage. And that good is peanut butter. So we sort of have to be very clear. If trade occurs, which is the premise for question 5 to even make sense, if trade happens, Argentina will export jelly beans, Chile will export peanut butter. So in question 5, the presumption correctly here is that if trade occurs, Argentina will be the exporter of jelly beans and Chile will be the exporter of peanut butter. So in trade, Chile will be buying jelly beans. That's why Chile cares what the price of jelly beans will be. And for Chile to buy jelly beans, it must be getting the jelly beans at a lower cost than it can get in its own country. So in its own country, if Chile wants to, in effect, get jelly beans, it has to sacrifice half a unit of peanut butter. So in Chile, in autarky, the price of 1 unit of jelly beans is half a unit of peanut butter. In order for Chile to be motivated to buy its jelly beans from Argentina, therefore, it must be offered the following deal. Chile can buy its jelly beans from Argentina for less than half a pound of peanut butter. In other words, Chile won't switch to getting its jelly beans from Argentina unless it can get a better deal than it can get by moving along its own production possibility frontier. By moving along its own production possibility frontier, Chile can get a jelly bean at the sacrifice of half a unit of peanut butter. So in order to induce Chile to buy from Argentina, Argentina must offer Chile a price that's lower than 1/2. And that's why the answer to 5 is D. It's a little bit tricky here because the question uses the word price. And of course, when we hear the word price, we're imagining a dollar price. But there are no dollars in this model. all trade is good for good. It's like barter. So the word price here doesn't mean a dollar price. It means how much of a unit of some stuff are you sacrificing to get what you want. Now, question 6 is a tough question. The intuition is Argentina will get the best gain from trade when the price of jelly beans is what? When the price of jelly beans is as high as possible. In other words, Argentina is being the exporter of jelly beans, wants the highest possible price for jelly beans. So that means Argentina wants the highest number of peanut butter units for every jelly bean it sells. So that's the sense in which Argentina can have a high price for the thing it exports. And option B, 3 pounds of peanut butter per pound of jelly beans, represents the highest price that Argentina can get for the thing that it exports, which is jelly beans. And question 7 is a little bit strange because it's so simple. Question 7 asks, what is the opportunity cost of a pound of peanut butter in Chile? Well, the answer is very simple. 2 pounds of jelly beans per pound of peanut butter. Okay, so the answer to number 7 is actually an easier one to get than the couple that went before it. And that's where we will stop doing this review of the Chile and Argentina scenario. I think you have the basic idea here that you need to convert the information you're given to diagrams like what you see here, and you look at the slopes and the intercepts of the two production possibility frontiers, and that's how you figure out the answers to questions about this sort of scenario. Again, I'll repeat myself yet again. It's all about the diagram and using your visual sense and simple numbers, and you certainly don't try to do complicated arithmetic calculations to figure this out. So that's the end of this little video.